There are television shows that entertain you, and then there are television shows that raise you. The Rifleman was the second kind, a father, a son, a rifle that fired faster than any man could count, and a small New Mexico town that somehow contained every truth about loyalty, grief, and what it costs to protect the people you love. But the cameras stopped rolling a long time ago. So, where did the lives behind those faces go? Some quietly and beautifully forward, others toward heartbreak that no script could have prepared them for. Hi, my name is Edward, and this is Screen Legends.
I midwifed this one into the world. Now I gotta bury him.
Chuck Connors, as Lucas McCain. Chuck Connors was 46 years old when The Rifleman premiered, though he carried himself with the easy physical authority of a man who had never once doubted that he belonged exactly where he was standing. And where he was standing, more often than not, was 6 feet 5 inches off the ground, because Chuck Connors was enormous. Not just tall, but broad and long-limbed, and completely at ease inside his own body in the way that only certain athletes ever managed to be. And that was no accident, because before he was Lucas McCain, Chuck Connors was a professional athlete, a genuinely rare one, born Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors in Brooklyn, New York in 1921. And yes, that was really his full name, which I think alone tells you something about his mother's ambitions. Connors played professional basketball in the Basketball Association of America, which would eventually become the NBA, and professional baseball in the major leagues. He played first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs. He is, to this day, one of the very few men in history to have played professionally in both the NBA and Major League Baseball. He also played professional football. At this point, I am fairly confident he simply had too much body to use for just one sport. He transitioned to acting in the early 1950s, appearing in films and television before The Rifleman made him a household name. As Lucas McCain, he brought something that other Western leads often lacked: genuine physical presence combined with genuine emotional availability. When Lucas sat across from his son and talked about the cost of violence, you believed it. When he raised that modified Winchester rifle, which he could fire and reload in under 2 seconds, a real skill Connors actually developed, you believed that too. The character was tender and terrifying in equal measure. That is a rare combination. Connors wore it naturally. After The Rifleman ended in 1963, Connors continued working steadily in film and television throughout the 1960s and 70s, appearing in projects ranging from westerns to action films to dramatic television movies. He was never quite able to replicate the cultural footprint of Lucas McCain, but he remained a recognizable and respected figure in American entertainment for decades. In his later years, Connors faced the physical decline that comes to all athletes eventually, his body finally calling in the debts of a lifetime of extraordinary use. He was diagnosed with lung cancer and passed away on November 10, 1992, at the age of 71 in Los Angeles, California. His death was mourned widely and genuinely, because Chuck Connors was not merely a television actor who had once played a beloved role. He was, by all accounts from those who knew him, a man of warmth and decency who treated people with the same quiet respect that Lucas McCain had always shown the people of North Fork. Life and role do not always line up that neatly. With Connors, they came close enough that the distinction barely mattered.
Howdy, Mr. Bly. My name's Mark McCain.
Johnny Crawford, as Mark McCain. If Chuck Connors was the foundation of The Rifleman, then Johnny Crawford was its heart. He was 12 years old when the show began. 12 years old, and already possessed of a screen presence so natural and unforced that even adult actors twice his age could not quite explain where it came from. Crawford played Mark McCain, Lucas's son, the boy at the center of everything. The reason Lucas had chosen to build a life on a ranch rather than drift through the frontier as a hired gun. Mark was curious and idealistic and occasionally impulsive in the way that all boys that age are, and Crawford played every shade of that with a lightness that never once felt like performance. He was, incidentally, already a professional performer before The Rifleman. As a child, he had been one of the original Mouseketeers on the Mickey Mouse Club, which means that a meaningful portion of mid-century American childhood was shaped by this one young man. That is either impressive or slightly alarming, depending on how you think about cultural influence. Probably both. The chemistry between Crawford and Connors is the thing that holds the Rifleman together across all 5 seasons. They were not merely convincing as father and son. They genuinely loved each other. Connors took a protective, paternal interest in Crawford from the very beginning. And Crawford has spoken in interviews across the years about the way Connors looked out for him on set and off. You cannot fake that warmth on camera. It either exists between 2 people or it does not. After the show ended, Crawford pursued a dual career as an actor and a musician. He recorded several albums, developed a following as a performer of popular and nostalgic American songs, and continued appearing in film and television projects. He never became a major star in the conventional sense after The Rifleman, but he never stopped working, and he carried the memory of the show with him with evident affection throughout his life. And then came the cruelest chapter. In 2019, Johnny Crawford was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He was 73 years old. The news hit the show's fan community with particular force because Crawford had always been so present, so clear-eyed, so full of the same bright attentiveness that had defined Mark McCain 60 years earlier. The disease took that from him slowly and then completely. He passed away on April 24th, 2021, at the age of 75 in Los Angeles, California, with his wife Charlotte beside him. I will be honest with you, this one is hard to get through without feeling the weight of it, because Johnny Crawford spent 60 years being the boy who reminded fathers to talk to their sons, and reminded sons to listen to their fathers. And then the disease came for his memory, and if there is an injustice in that, there is also something quietly profound in the fact that while he may have lost his memories at the end, millions of people kept them for him. They still do.
He got killed. Best man I ever knew. So he ended up on the same side as the fellows that shot him.
Paul, Fix, as Marshall Micah, Torrance, every western town needs its lawman, and North Fork had one of the best. Paul Fix was 55 years old when The Rifleman began, and he brought to the role of Marshall Micah Torrance something that younger actors often cannot quite access: the particular weariness of a man who has seen enough of human nature to be patient with all of it. Micah was not a physically imposing lawman. He was not quick on the draw. He was the kind of man who could talk a dangerous situation down before it ever became dangerous, and who understood that the true measure of law in a small community was not fear, but trust. His relationship with Lucas McCain was one of the quietest and most satisfying in the series. 2 men of principle who had each arrived at their convictions through different roads, respecting each other without needing to explain themselves. In a show full of dramatic confrontations, the scenes between Fix and Connors often carried the most weight precisely because they were so understated. What many viewers did not know while watching those scenes was that Fix had been one of Hollywood's most reliable character actors for over 2 decades before The Rifleman. He appeared in hundreds of films and television episodes stretching back to the silent era, and he was a close friend and frequent collaborator of John Wayne, appearing in many of Wayne's most celebrated westerns. Fix was, in the truest sense of the phrase, a craftsman of the old school. He showed up, he knew his lines, he found the truth in the scene, and he never once tried to make it about himself. Paul Fix passed away on October 14th, 1983, in Los Angeles, at the age of 79. He left behind a body of work so large and varied that it is almost impossible to hold it all in your mind at once. But if you want to know who Paul Fix was in a single image, it is this: an older man in a marshal's badge, standing on a dusty street in North Fork, watching Lucas McCain ride out, trusting him completely. Hope longs as Margaret McCain. Here is something The Rifleman did that most westerns of its era would never have had the courage to attempt. It built its entire emotional foundation on absence, on grief, on the particular silence that settles into a home when the person who made it a home is no longer there. Margaret McCain, Lucas's wife, Mark's mother, was gone before the opening credits of the very first episode ever rolled. She did not die on screen in a dramatic scene designed to break your heart in one clean moment. She was simply already gone, already part of the past. And that choice, quiet and almost understated as it was, turned out to be one of the most powerful creative decisions the show ever made. Because Margaret's absence did not stay in the background. It moved through every episode like a current running just beneath the surface. You felt her in the way Lucas stood alone at the fence at the end of a long day, looking out at land he had chosen to farm because she had wanted a life built on something solid. You felt her in the way young Mark sometimes asked questions, careful, searching questions, the kind that boys ask when they are trying to reconstruct a person entirely from secondhand memory, and the expressions that cross their father's face when certain subjects come up. She was the reason Lucas was the man he was. She was the reason North Fork was home, rather than just a place to pass through. She was, in the deepest sense, the emotional architecture holding the whole series upright, and she had a face, a real one. Hope Lang was 32 years old when she stepped into those brief, luminous flashback appearances as Margaret McCain, and she brought to them something that is genuinely difficult to achieve on screen, the feeling of a life fully lived beyond the frame. When Lang appeared, even for just a few moments, you understood immediately why Lucas had loved her, and why losing her had remade him from the inside out. She did not play sentiment. She played truth. There is a difference, and Lang always knew exactly where that line was. What makes her contribution to the Rifleman even more remarkable is that it represented only a small corner of a career of extraordinary range and quality. Just 1 year before the show began, she had received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress for her performance in Peyton Place in 1957. She would later win not 1, but 2 Emmy Awards for her work in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. She worked alongside major stars in major productions across 4 decades, and in every single one of them, she brought the same quality. A warmth that felt completely unperformed, a depth that made you lean slightly forward in your seat without quite knowing why. Hope Lang passed away on December 19, 2003, in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 70. She deserved more tributes than she received. She usually does. Bill Quinn, as Sweeney the bartender.
What is he? Sidebuster? Oh, he's got a nice little ran.
I want to take a moment here for Bill Quinn. Just a moment. Because Bill Quinn deserves one, and in my experience, people like Bill Quinn do not get nearly enough of them. You know this type of actor even if his name means nothing to you right now. You have seen him 100 times without ever once thinking to look him up afterward. He is the face behind the bar. The man who sets down the glass, leans against the counter, and listens with the particular patience of someone who has heard every kind of trouble a person can walk through a door carrying. He does not get the dramatic speeches. He does not get the showdown in the street at high noon with the whole town watching. He does not get the scene where he breaks down and finally tells someone what he has been carrying all these years. What he gets is something smaller than all of that, and in the hands of the wrong actor, it would disappear entirely. But in the hands of the right actor, and Bill Quinn was absolutely the right actor, those small moments become something almost indispensable. Because here is the thing about fictional towns. They do not feel real because of their heroes. They feel real because of their bartenders, their bankers, their general store owners. The people who are simply there, episode after episode, existing in the background of other people's drama with the quiet credibility of people who have lives of their own that the camera never quite gets around to following. When those background figures feel false, the whole world feels false with them. When they feel true, the whole world holds together. Bill Quinn made North Fork hold together. He played Sweeney the bartender across multiple seasons of The Rifleman, and what he brought to that role was something that cannot be taught in any acting class and cannot be manufactured through technique alone. He brought presence, not the loud, commanding kind that announces itself the moment someone walks into a room. The quiet kind. The kind that makes you feel, without any particular reason you could point to, that you are in safe hands. That whatever else is about to happen in this episode, this corner of the saloon is steady ground. Quinn had spent decades building that quality before The Rifleman ever came along. He appeared in a remarkable number of television series and film productions across his career, moving through the landscape of American entertainment with the unhurried reliability of a man who understood that the work itself was the point. Not the recognition, not the awards, not the profile in a magazine, the work. Show up, find the truth in the scene, serve the story, go home. He did that for decades, and American television was quietly better for it in ways that almost nobody stopped to measure at the time. Bill Quinn passed away on May 7, 1994 in Los Angeles at the age of 81. The bartender closed up shop, but the warmth he left behind that counter in North Fork has never quite dissipated. Some presences are just like that. They linger long after the person is gone, holding a small piece of a world together from a great distance. Bill Quinn's does. Harlan Ward, as John Hamilton.
So if it's all right with you, Senator, we'd like to ride along with you.
Every frontier town has a banker. And every frontier banker, at least in the Western tradition, has a complicated relationship with the word trust. The genre has not always been kind to men who work behind desks rather than ride across open land. The banker in a Western is frequently the villain, or, if not the villain, then the obstacle, the small-minded guardian of money in a world where money means survival, and survival means everything. He is the man who forecloses on the widow's farm, the man who sides with the powerful against the vulnerable because the powerful are better for business. You have seen that character so many times that you almost stop noticing him. And then there is John Hamilton. Harlan Ward was 44 years old when The Rifleman began, and across the run of the series, he played the North Fork banker with a quiet dignity that gently and completely refused every cliché the role could have fallen into. Hamilton was not pompous. He was not grasping. He was not the man pulling strings from behind a mahogany desk while honest ranchers suffered outside his window. He was something far more interesting and far more difficult to play convincingly. He was a decent man doing a complicated job in a place that was still figuring out what it wanted to be. Think about what that actually requires of a frontier banker in 1958 New Mexico. You are not operating inside an established financial system with centuries of institutional support behind you. You are trying to build one. Every loan you make is a bet on a person, on their character, on their capacity to endure whatever the land and the weather and the general unpredictability of frontier life decides to throw at them that season. Every decision you make affects the entire community, because in a town the size of North Fork, there is no separation between the institution and the people it serves. They are the same thing. Ward understood all of that, and he put it into Hamilton without ever announcing that he was doing so. It was simply there, in the way he carried himself, in the way he spoke to Lucas McCain and to the other townspeople, in the small, precise gestures of a man who took his responsibilities seriously because he understood what was actually at stake. Ward was a working actor in the fullest and most honorable sense of that phrase. His career spanned several decades and a remarkable number of productions, and he brought to every single one of them the same professionalism, the same craft, the same understanding that an ensemble is only ever as strong as the people working quietly at its edges. He was one of those edges. He held his corner of North Fork together with complete reliability and zero fanfare, which is exactly what the role needed and exactly what he provided. Harlan Ward passed away on October 25th, 1980 in Los Angeles at the age of 62. 62 is not enough years. His name has faded from the conversation around the show in ways that do not do justice to what he contributed. North Fork needed its banker. It was genuinely lucky to have this one. Patricia Blair as Lou Mallory.
It so happens I baked the pie.
When The Rifleman entered its 4th and 5th seasons, the writers faced a challenge that the show's own premise had created. Lucas McCain was one of American television's most compelling leading men. He was also a widower living alone with his son, and audiences, being audiences, had feelings about that. Enter Lou Mallory. Patricia Blair was 32 years old when she joined the series as Lou Mallory, a strong-willed businesswoman who arrived in North Fork to run the hotel and promptly complicated Lucas McCain's carefully organized emotional life in the most enjoyable possible way. Lou was independent, sharp, unafraid of conflict, and perfectly capable of holding her own in a conversation with a man who stood 6 feet 5 inches tall and carried a modified Winchester rifle. The dynamic between her and Lucas was warm and adult, and sometimes genuinely funny in a way that the show had not quite attempted before. It suited both actors beautifully. Blair was already an experienced television actress when she joined the show, having appeared in numerous Western and dramatic series throughout the late 1950s. She brought a confidence to Lou Mallory that grounded the character immediately, making her feel less like a late addition to an established show, and more like someone who had always been there, waiting for the right moment to walk into the story. After The Rifleman ended, Patricia Blair continued working in television through the 1960s, appearing in a variety of series and television films. In her later years, she stepped back from the entertainment industry and embraced a more private life. She passed away on June 10, 2013, in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 84. There is something quietly fitting about the fact that Lou Mallory arrived in North Fork with complete self-sufficiency and left on her own terms. Patricia Blair did the same. Joan Taylor as Millie Scott.
Look, everybody, please. I'm just getting settled here.
Before Lou Mallory, there was Millie Scott. Joan Taylor joined The Rifleman in its second season as Millie Scott, the proprietor of the general store in North Fork, and the woman who first made audiences genuinely wonder whether Lucas McCain might find a way to love again after Margaret. She was warm without being soft. She was practical without being cold. She was, in other words, exactly the kind of woman that a man shaped by frontier life and personal loss would find quietly irresistible. Taylor was 37 years old when she took on the role, and she brought to it a naturalism that felt less like acting and more like simply being. She had a gift for making you forget the cameras. In the scenes between Millie and Lucas, tentative, careful, full of things left unsaid, you could feel the weight of two people trying to figure out how much they were allowed to want. Joan Taylor had built a solid career in film and television through the 1950s, appearing in numerous westerns and dramatic productions before The Rifleman. She was a familiar and trusted presence in the genre, and the show was fortunate to have her. After leaving the series, Taylor gradually withdrew from the entertainment industry and spent her later decades living privately and away from the public eye. She passed away on May 11, 2012, in Beverly Hills, California, at the age of 89. 89 years is a long and full life. And somewhere in the middle of it, for a few seasons, she stood behind the counter of a general store in North Fork and made a grieving rancher remember what warmth felt like. That is not a small thing. Guest stars and the weight of a legacy. Here is something that tells you everything you need to know about the cultural standing of The Rifleman during its original run. Look at who walked through the town of North Fork as guest stars between 1958 and 1963. Dennis Hopper appeared on the show. Robert Redford appeared on the show, twice in fact, before either of his feet had touched the floor of a major film set. Michael Landon, who would go on to become one of the most beloved figures in American television history through Bonanza and Little House on the Prairie, appeared on The Rifleman. Sammy Davis Jr. made an appearance. So did Martin Landau, Robert Vaughn, and a roster of other actors who would go on to define American film and television for the next 30 years. What that guest list tells you is that The Rifleman was, during its run, considered one of the premier showcases for dramatic talent on American television. Appearing on it meant something. It was the kind of show where serious actors went to do serious work in front of a serious audience. The fact that it was ostensibly a children's western did not diminish that. If anything, it raised the stakes, because the children watching were paying very close attention, and they could always tell the difference between actors who meant it and actors who did not. The show's legacy is also, in a sense, the legacy of what it taught. A generation of American men grew up watching Lucas McCain and absorbing, without quite realizing it, a model of fatherhood built on presence, honesty, and the willingness to be wrong. A generation of American children grew up watching Mark McCain and understanding at some deep level that the relationship between a parent and a child is not a given. It is a choice remade every single day. Lucas McCain chose his son every day. You could see it in every episode. That is not a small legacy. That is an enormous one. We have come a long way from North Fork. We have walked through the lives of people who built something remarkable together in front of cameras in the late 1950s and left it standing long after the sets were struck and the studio lights went dark. Some of them lived long, full lives and passed away quietly, their bodies finally releasing them after decades of work and memory. Some of them, like Johnny Crawford, were taken in ways that felt genuinely unfair, and some of them gave everything they had to a role and then went on to build entirely different chapters, finding new identities on the other side of fame. What strikes me most, sitting with all of this, is how much the Rifleman asked of its cast without ever announcing that it was doing so. It asked them to embody grief without sentimentality, to portray justice without self-righteousness, to make a small fictional town in New Mexico feel like the most important place in the world for 25 minutes every week. And they did it. Week after week, season after season, they did it. Chuck Connors and Johnny Crawford never shared a scene that felt like acting. They shared scenes that felt like something true, and the people around them, Fix and Blair and Taylor and Quinn and all the rest, held the edges of that truth in place so it never collapsed under its own weight. So, if you grew up with the Rifleman, I hope this felt like something worth your time. And if you came to it fresh today, I hope it sends you back to the beginning, to episode 1, to a father and a son riding together through the high desert, figuring out how to build a life from what the world had left them. Because that story, it turns out, does not age. It only deepens. If these stories have moved you, we would love for you to follow Screen Legends and join us as we continue looking back at the lives behind the lights. There are so many more stories left to tell. I am Edward, and I will see you in the next one.